Hello guys, so I know I haven't been uploading in a while, and well, this is something new. But I really wanted to imitate the Theo style of just kind of sitting and talking. Now, I know the setup is kind of jank. I have a folding table, really small folding table with my MacBook, and then my microphone right here, and I have my camera right there, and everything's connected to my MacBook. So, and this video is going to be a bit different because I want to also focus especially on technologies that I use instead of kind of doing a tutorial like I have before. And in terms of the Ghost series too, there's something I need to say about it, which I will get to near the end of the video. Now first, I think I should answer, where have I been, right? Where have I been for the past 2 weeks? And very simply put, I've been busy. I've been busy with school, and I've been busy with my internal assessment. And because of my internal assessment, I've been just always writing, always doing history, and school. And I haven't been doing the best right now, honestly. My grades have been kind of taking a suicide right now. So, as a result, I am been quite busy with that. So I haven't found much time to record YouTube videos, little motivation even, but I really wanted to make a video because I saw this other guy, I think is Ben Davis. So this Ben Davis here, he also has been imitating that style. And as a result, I feel very, as well, I really want to do my own kind of take on it. Now, in terms of what I want to showcase is what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about my love for Vue. Vue has been a new addition to my tech stack maybe a year ago, because I originally was a React developer. I started with React, and I was actually quite, how do you say, tribal mentality. I always tried to stay with React, so I never actually really wanted to switch off of it until I gave Vue a try. And Vue is significantly different compared to React, at least how I used React and how I used Vue. But I've grown to love Vue, and I've found it to be very simple to use, and very logical. It is in some ways opinionated. I don't think there's any framework without an opinion. But I especially like Vue. So we're gonna jump on my MacBook here. I'm gonna jump into the code. So I have everything cloned and installed. So I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. Yes, I trust the offers. So let me make this bigger. So this is the project. So first, I think it's like it should show off what it looks like right now. You can actually visit this. It's public domain, which is lizj.xyz. That's going to be my new domain. I know I have this one right here, rainwash.xyz, but that one's more for personal stuff, while lizj.xyz is going to be more for my portfolio stuff. So first, let's run the dev. Already installed all of the stuff. And also, I think I want to talk about is Bun. I'll talk about Bun later in a separate video, but I simply love Bun. It's fast, it's simple, and for me, at least, for most of the stuff I've done with it so far, it's just dropped in and replaced, and it works. So let's first show it off. So if I open this up, let me copy the link here. So if I go here, you can see this. It's very simple, actually. So you have a background animation right there. And you have a grid, you have a responsive grid design. Now, this grid design was taken from a YouTube video. I followed it. I mean, I obviously had to re-implement it in Vue, because the original was just in native JavaScript. But I really liked it, and I didn't really make much changes to it. And then if you scroll down here, you can see the icons. Now, I don't know why it looks like that, because on my other computer, it doesn't. Okay, there we go. So I don't know what happened for that to happen. But as you can see, when we scroll down, it animates in, and that's nice. So, and here you can see all the stuff I've used. So, Git, Linux, yeah, if you want to visit. But specifically today, we're focusing on Vue, because that's what this website was ultimately made out of. And I want to note that it's not with server-side Vue, which would be through like Nux, for example. But this is completely client-side. This is completely a SPA, single-page application, powered by Vite, which is also a very nice build tool, but from what I know, Bun is starting to get its own bundler, and almost might be obsolete. But in the meantime, I haven't tried anything with Bun's bundler yet. So I've just been using V. Now, other than that, there's really nothing here. You can go to all these different ones. As you can see, it's nowhere near done. But I'm less interested in what my website is. It's just another portfolio website, so it links to my GitHub, my YouTube, and my LinkedIn. What I'm more focused on is the code. So first, you obviously have your index.html. So this right here is once the page loads. So how Vue works, like any other JavaScript framework, is that it's going to load JavaScript, and that your UI is made structurally through JavaScript technically. And in Vue's case, that's going to be called the Vue single SFC, single file components, which is a unique take on it compared to React, where React has functions, and functions return pages, or what we call JSX or TSX. This is also written in TypeScript as well, because I like TypeScript. And so your entry of the point of the program is always going to be your main.ts. Now, TS does not stand for this shit. That's a common misconception. TS does not stand for this shit. TS stands for TypeScript. And I had to mention that because some people say TS is this. It's not. Okay. Either way, so Vue is very simple. Right here, you have a really simple main.ts. And also this is powered by Tailwind. Tailwind 4 to be specific, which is the really new one. And Vue router for my client-side routes, which is, for example, like /projects and /blog right here. So going here, you can see that I create a router, and then that router is being used as almost middleware. I also use Linus. So Linus is what's giving a really nice smooth scroll. As you can see, you might not be able to tell, but unless you actually go to it, but I can try to turn it off, for example. So if I went here, because this is what's ultimately telling the website that part is Linus. So if I save that, the scroll is, it's uglier. I don't know. It's uglier in my opinion. So as a result, I use Linus, which is a really nice, because it basically smooths out. Now I know it's laggy because this is one of the 8GB models of the MacBook, so it's a little slow. My dad gave this to me though, so I appreciate it. And here I also have defined routes for the React or for the Vue router. So that's not what I want to talk about, because basically anybody can find this out. What I like though is the idea of single file components, SFC. I'm going to look at home.vue because that actually has stuff to look at. So if I zoom out here, so a Vue file can be broken up into 3 parts. You have your script part, you have your template part, and then you have your style part. And what's nice about the styling for Vue is that you can scope it. You can change the language of it. For example, if you wanted to change it to less or Sass, you can do a lot of things just right here, as well as the template language. You can just change here. You can change it to, I think, yeah, Puck. That's the only other one. And then you have your script, which in order for it to be detected as a component, in order for it to be importable, you need this setup. And in the setup function, you can define state, props, which is basically when you pass information into subcomponents, and other stuff like importing dependencies, for example. And I know for Nuxt, this is not a Vue specific thing, but for Nuxt, there's automatic component importation, so you don't need to actually even declare imports, because the Nuxt compiler will be able to automatically make those imports instead. And I also use Iconify for this, which is a free icon provider of multiple different icon sets, all open source. And I use Anime.js, which right now is in version 3. So I know Anime.js has recently got an update after what the developer said, about 5 years of development, basically. And as a result, Anime.js is a bit old. It doesn't have good framework integration, but that doesn't matter, because Vue is designed so well that you can basically write in JavaScript, or like how you would design a website natively. And what my favorite thing is right here, this, use template ref. So if you're familiar with React also has refs. So if I go to React ref, right, if I go here, what basically a ref is it allows for you to take the DOM, right? Because both Vue and React have 2 parts, a virtual DOM and an actual DOM. What a ref allows you to do is take that actual DOM and do things to it. So, for example, I had to use this ref right here, and it's defined, or its usage is here, in this container, where I have all my different skills, or all the different stuff I use. And the reason why I need to use that is right here for anime, where I can target it. So what's very nice about it here is this: when you just refer to the dot value of it, you basically get the DOM element, as if you were to do a query selector all, for example. And in that case, I'm able to use anime.js to animate that. And then this is also, there's also hooks in Vue, just like React, except these hooks are not like native. These hooks are provided by the Vue use, which is a library that has a bunch of different almost like simple or like necessary use hook statements. And here I'm just using the intersection observer, so that basically says once it's visible. So for example, if I go back up here, I don't see it first, so it's only going to animate once I see it. That's what that's responsible for. And then here are two of components that I made myself, which I will talk more about. But also, like React, you have your lifecycle. And now what I specifically like about Vue compared to React is, for me, I find that Vue's reactivity is much simpler to understand and much simpler to use. For example, so in order to define state, so in React, for example, you would have to have two parts. It basically returns an array where you have to destructure that array into two components, which is the, let's say, the value itself, and then a set value function. And you would write the useState hook for that in React. But we don't use, but in Vue, it's much more simple. You can just define the state, which is like, for example, state equals ref, and then you can just put in whatever value, right? And if you put in an initial value, then it's going to imply that value from the type. If you're using TypeScript, which I suggest you do, because TypeScript is quite essential for JavaScript development. In the ref, you can use open bracket, close brackets to define a structure or the data type, for example, if we did number. So in order for it to stop yelling at me, I just have to import it here. So now it only has numbers in it, and if I put a string, for example, it's going to error because I said specifically it can only be a number. Now, in order to access state, it's very simple. If you're in the template section, so this is what's being rendered on the screen. If you're in the template section, it's just like React, where you can use the, for example, the double bracket, and then in there you can reference the state. And it actually is somewhat separate from what you would use it if it was in the JavaScript section, for example. For example, say you wanted to update the state when the, say, user clicks a button, right? Let's write a function, user button click, right? Let's make that a function. If that function is called, we can adopt the state, but we can't just do it like this, for example. This wouldn't work because when it's in the script context, you have to use the value. And in terms of why it's designed like that, I would assume because refs refer to both state as well as template references. And when it's already used in the template, then you kind of basically already know that it's going to be used as state. And then you can do whatever you want to it, for example. And when this state updates, they're going to be able to just re-render the page, or not re-render the page, but re-render the component that's having its state updated. And Vue does it much better than React, I would say. In terms of my experiences I've had with React, and maybe it's my poor coding practices. I'm not going to admit that I'm the best coder or really good at coding even. But when I would use React, a lot of times you would get infinite loops, as well as just a lot of state that you didn't expect to re-render. And I know that I think Theo did a video about it too, where he was talking about the React compiler, for example. But a lot of pages, like for example Twitch or Twitter, X, those websites also use React on the inside. But with their React, every time, for example, you scroll on Twitter, it re-renders. And it's just inefficient. And what Theo was demonstrating was, number one, how easy it is in React to make state problems, but number two, how the React compiler can solve for it. Now, I haven't used Vue in a production. I don't make any money from anything. I'm not hired by anyone. If you want to hire me, you can hire me. But I don't use, I haven't put this into a big production sense, wherein it's like for a company, for example. So I haven't run into like large scale state, where I have to manage massive amounts of states. If I create a project like that, I will talk about it, about my experience with that in terms of Vue. But in terms of what I have used Vue for, it's much simpler compared to React. And also, I know I didn't use it in here because there's no there's no user input for a portfolio. But what React has is the V model, or not React, Vue. Vue has the V model, which is a much simpler way to update things. From what I understand, I know that, I know that, for example, ShadCN. I use ShadCN on one of my projects. It was for SS Redirect. If you didn't know that, that was also written in Vue. And actually, I might take a look at it in a separate video. But in terms of user input, in React, how it would work is you would have to listen for changes on that input. And whenever there was input change, then you would set the state of it, which also is bound to the value of the input. But as a result, whenever you type, there's multiple re-renders, and if you do it wrong, then you could be re-rendering massive amounts of parts of your project without knowing, because state in React is based on where it's placed, right? Based on the context in which it exists initially. And it will basically re-render all this, whatever the scope is of where it was declared. So as a result, it's very difficult to manage, but in Vue, it's very simple, which is the V model. And what V model does is it basically takes into account that kind of idea of having to bind inputs to JavaScript or to objects that can be accessed, right? You need to sign up, you need to send API requests, for example. You need to have a way to access what's written in it. And as a result, you have V model, which is very useful in the React or in the Vue documentation here. This is basically what I have used it for. I haven't seen it being used for other things, and I haven't personally used it for other ways. But I've always used it just as input here, where you just define it and you give it a title, and whatever this string is defined here. And that's actually, if you go back here with the refs, this is also the case. It's not what the variable is, because in here you define it not through its variable, but you define it through its ref, whatever that string is. If I go to, for example, if I go to the hoverable tooltip, so this is a component I made. And you can see right here, the component is very simple in TypeScript to define the props, for example, where you can just define it, whatever the interface is, whatever the type is, through that bracket. Now, here you can also see I have more use of state here, where I update the state whenever there's a mouse over. And this is kind of how you're going to do it. You obviously have to make sure that the DOM is ready before you add events to it. Otherwise, it's going to be trying to add events to things that don't exist. That's why it's in our onMounted hook, which is saying basically when Vue mounts this, when it becomes visible, then do these things. At this point, then we can guarantee that the ref does exist. And here you can see I'm using this, and because of single file components, now you think that single file components might just be referring to like a single page, right? Like for the way that we define routes, but it isn't. It also is kind of like React, where you can define a functional component, quote unquote, and you reuse that and pass information through it. So you have obviously the props, which was defined up here, but you also have this right here, the slot. So the slot is basically like props.children. Is equivalent to that in React. And other than that, it's nothing too special, but it's much nicer that it's more like this instead of like double bracket props.children. Because if you were using React with TypeScript, then you have to take into account for that, right? You have to take into account for that type. And yeah, I used, so here is that background grid, and this was done through the YouTube video. Now I'm gonna pause the recording right now. So I returned. I had to go do something real quick, and I came back with water. Water is important, guys. We gotta make sure we drink. Anyways, in this document, or in this file, I just want to put attention into the ability to integrate CSS right in the same file. Instead of separating it into different files and having to import it, Vue, with Vue single file components, everything is just right there. You don't have to create a second file for any CSS file, because you can just write the CSS with your component. And I like that approach much more than separating it, because number one, less imports, number two, easier readability, and number three, a greater connection between what you're writing and what you see. And the only CSS, the global CSS that I have is for Tailwind, Tailwind 4, which I don't know how I feel about Tailwind 4. It's quite difficult, actually, I think, because a lot of ideas changed. Now, for one, I mean, the classes stayed practically the same. However, changing changing the configuration of Tailwind has been done differently now. Now it's integrated into a CSS file under the... Give me 1 minute, guys. Someone's calling me. Okay, may the recording continue. That was my mom calling me. This is why I'm gonna get a new setup, hopefully. I want a different setup for this kind of talk to the camera vibe. I hope I can get in the basement where people can leave me alone. Anyways, going back here. With Tailwind 4, everything's defined in or as a CSS class, where you can change stuff with the add theme. Changing a font family was kind of a pain in the ass because there was no documentation. A lot of the documentation is missing for Tailwind 4 in terms of how to alter, how to change things. Much different than having a Tailwind CSS or Tailwind JavaScript configuration, which I actually preferred. I would rather have JavaScript configuration than having to throw it all back into CSS. It's annoying. And you can see here that I just had to import it because you can't have at import and the Tailwind CSS directed at the top. For some reason, after I separated the import of the font into a separate file, I was able to change the font. Who could have known? I don't know how, I don't know why, but it just worked. And here is just some neomorphism classes that I've defined, which is for the style. I mean, it's not necessarily full-on neomorphism, but I really tried my best of it. You can see it's a little bit classy and a little bit of shadows, because I think neomorphism looks cool and I wanted to give it a shot. Now, why do I like this more than React? Well, very simply, I just think it's a lot more organized for Vue. In Vue, you have all three parts of a website, or even a component even. The logic, which is the script tag, the template, which is the template tag, obviously, and then the style, which is the styles tag. Having all those three integrated into one complete file is much easier for development compared to React. And it's kind of strict in it because in Vue, you can only have one component exported from one file. If you wanted to make, say, a subcomponent, you would have to define a subcomponent in a separate file. Now, at first, I didn't like that because I would reuse styles, for example, as you can see. I mean, you can't see, but if I go to my home.vue file right here, you can see I've repeated this a lot, which is why I had to extrapolate it into its own thing right here. But in React, I would be able to define that right in the file itself. I wouldn't have to create a separate file for it. But I think that separating it into a separate file makes it ultimately more readable because I'm able to see the style of it that I need to do, the logic of it. I'm able to separate that from the place in which it's used. I can separate the component from the context in which it's placed it, which I think is beneficial. Some might disagree with me, and that's okay, but this is my how I use it. So yeah, I love Vue. I plan to continue on using it, and I might give other frameworks a try. I already have used React a while ago. I'm not sure about all the new changes that they've done, like server-side components and / server-side rendering and React compiler that Theo was talking about, but I hope that I'll be able to learn more about Vue because I've only been using it for, say, a couple months at this point, at least seriously using it. Again, I've just been quite busy with school. In terms of Go Series 2, I have to make the sad conclusion that I think Go Series 2 might not happen. Well, it's definitely going to happen, but I think it's the that's more likely to be a result for Go Series 2.